Hi, you're on the channel Truth Unraveled, Real Stories, Raw Confessions, the place where the truth doesn't knock. It kicks the door down asterisk. The display window of the boutique was like a perfectly lit museum exhibit, each bag positioned on a velvet stand under its own soft, glowing light. We weren't supposed to be here. This was a shortcut to the parking garage, a path I usually avoided for this exact reason, but the rain had been coming down in sheets, and this was the only dry route. Sarah, however, had stopped walking the moment she saw it. Her hand, which had been loosely holding mine, slipped away. As if pulled by a magnetic force, her entire posture changed. Her shoulders straightened, her chin lifted, and she took a slow, deliberate step closer to the glass, her reflection superimposing itself over the expensive leather goods inside. I knew that look. It was a look of pure, unadulterated want. It was a look I had come to dread over the past year. Oh, my God, she breathed, her voice a hushed, reverent whisper lost in the sound of the pouring rain behind us. It's the new limited edition Celeste. I've only seen it in magazines. She turned to me, her eyes wide with a kind of manically no longer found endearing. Leo, I need it. It would be perfect with my black dress for the gala next month. My stomach, which had been in a permanent state of low-grade anxiety for weeks, tightened into a hard, cold knot. I knew the price tags in this place started at a number that represented 2 months of my groceries. I gently placed a hand on her arm, steering her slightly away from the window. Sarah, come on, you know what this place is like. Let's just get to the car. But she was a statue, immovable. Her eyes flicked from the bag to me, and the glee in them shifted, hardened into something else, a challenge. Why don't you think I'm worth it? The question hung in the damp air between us, loaded and toxic. It was a familiar weapon in her arsenal. Before I could formulate a response, a sales associate, impeccably dressed and wearing a smile that didn't reach her eyes, appeared at the door. Would you like to see it up close? She asked, her gaze expertly sliding over my worn jacket and settling on Sarah's expensive shoes. Sarah didn't need a second invitation. She swept inside, leaving me standing in the rain. Inside of the boutique was a sensory overload of silence, soft lighting, and the faint, oppressive smell of wealth. I stood awkwardly near the door, a soaked trespasser in a temple of consumption, while Sarah was already seated on a plush velvet stool, the bag, the Celeste, in her hands. She was caressing the leather, tracing the gold hardware with a fingertip, her expression one of near religious ecstasy. The sales associate stood by, her hands clasped, her smile now genuine as she watched a commission check materialize before her eyes. It's even more stunning in person, Sarah sighed, holding it up to her shoulder and turning to look at herself in a nearby mirror. It's just perfect. She looked at me, her eyes expectant. Well, what do you think? I felt every inch of the space between us. I knew what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to pull out my wallet, nod, and play my part in this familiar ritual. But the number the sales associate had murmured was not a number. It was an impossibility. It was my share of the rent for 3 months. It was the cost of repairing the brakes on my car. It was the ghost of every "I'll pay you back next month" that had never been paid back. I took a step forward, my voice low, trying to inject some sanity into the surreal scene. Sarah, it's a beautiful bag, but look at the price. That's insane for one accessory. Her face fell. The ecstasy evaporated, replaced by a storm of disappointment and something far uglier, contempt. The sales associate's smile tightened, her eyes becoming dismissive. She took a subtle step back, distancing herself from the failure of the transaction. Sarah placed the bag down on the counter as if it were a holy relic I had defiled. So, she said, her voice losing its hushed reverence and becoming sharp, loud enough to echo slightly in the quiet room. You knew the kind of woman I was when you met me. Leo, I have standards. I have a lifestyle to maintain. I can't be seen with last season's trash. She looked me up and down, her gaze lingering on my rain-soaked, off-brand shoes. And then she did it. She laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was a short, derisive, cruel burst of air. God, sometimes I forget how ordinary you are. It's just a bag. If you can't handle this, how will you ever handle a future? A ring? A house? Maybe you're just not built for a woman like me. The words, delivered with a casual, cutting precision, didn't feel like a slap, they felt like a surgical incision, clean and deep. Severing the last fragile thread that held my illusion of our relationship together, I stood there, in that temple of wealth, feeling the weight of my ordinariness, my inadequacy, pressed down on me by her scorn and the sales associate's silent judgment. The world didn't end, it just became very, very clear. The drive home was a journey through a tunnel of silence. The only sound was the rhythmic thump of the windshield wipers and the white noise roar of the rain. Sarah stared straight ahead, her arms crossed, her profile a mask of cold, furious entitlement. The expensive perfume she wore, which I used to love, now smelled cloying and suffocating. Each red light felt like an eternity. Under the weight of her seething disapproval, I replayed the scene in the boutique on a loop. Her laugh, the word ordinary, the way she had looked at my shoes. Each memory was a punch to the gut. But with each one, the initial sting of humiliation began to metamorphose. It was curdling, hardening into something else entirely. We reached our apartment, her apartment. I'd always just lived there, another accessory, and she got out without a word, slamming the car door so hard the whole vehicle shook. I didn't follow her in. I sat in the driver's seat, watching the rain distort the street lights into blurry halos, and let the silence fully claim me. This wasn't the first time. There had been other bags, other shoes, other thinly veiled insults about my job, my car, my friends, but it was the first time she had laughed. That laugh was the key that unlocked a door, had kept tightly sealed for a year. Behind that door was the truth. I was not her partner, I was her financier, her audience, her convenient excuse. I was ordinary until it was time to pay for something extraordinary. A strange calm descended over me, the kind that follows a catastrophic diagnosis. The anxiety was gone, the fear of her anger was gone. All that was left was a cold, crystalline clarity. I finally saw our relationship for what it was, a transaction where I was perpetually in debt. I got out of the car and walked into the building. But not to beg for forgiveness. I walked in with a new purpose. I found her in the walk-in closet she had commandeered entirely for herself, already angrily pulling clothes from racks. She didn't look at me. If you're here to apologize, you can save your breath. I'm not in the mood. I didn't speak. I just leaned against the doorframe and watched her. I looked at the rows of designer dresses, the shelves of handbags, the boxes of shoes, a museum of my inadequacy, a shrine to my financial and emotional drain. And in that moment, the first spark of an idea, beautiful in its terrible simplicity, was born. It wasn't born from anger, it was born from justice. I'm not apologizing, I said, my voice so calm it even surprised me. She froze, a silk blouse in her hand, and finally turned to look at me. Her eyes narrowed in suspicion. My quiet tone was more unnerving to her than any shout could have been. Then, what do you want? I gave her a small, empty smile. Nothing, absolutely nothing. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing confused in her temple of things. The plane was already forming, perfect and complete. It was time for a donation. The rest of that evening passed in a surreal, peaceful silence. Sarah, expecting a fight, was thrown off balance by my quiet detachment. She tried to pick a few arguments, throwing out barbed comments about my lack of ambition, but they just bounced off the new, resolute armor had forged in the front seat of my car. I simply nodded, said I understand, and continued packing a single suitcase with my things, my things, books, a few sentimental items, my clothes, which looked pathetically plain next to her opulent collection. I was an archaeologist excavating my own life from under the layers of hers. She watched me from the bedroom doorway, her confusion slowly giving way to a dawning, cold realization. This was different. I wasn't giving her the silent treatment. I was simply leaving. What are you doing? She finally asked, her voice lacking its earlier venom, replaced by a thread of uncertainty. And moving out, I said, not looking up from folding a sweater. It's clear I can't provide the lifestyle you require. I'm setting us both free. The word free seemed to confuse her more than anger her. She didn't understand a currency that wasn't monetary. She just shook her head and retreated, likely deciding I was having a breakdown and would come crawling back once I realized what I was losing. Little did she know, I had already realized what I was losing. a massive weight around my neck the next morning. I was awake before dawn. I had rented a van using the last of my savings. The plan was simple, clinical, and utterly irreversible. I waited until I heard the shower running, then, with a calm efficiency that felt almost robotic, I got to work. I went into that walk-in closet, the inner sanctum of her identity. I didn't look at the labels. I didn't feel a flicker of guilt or fear. I saw them for what they were: objects. I started with the bags, taking them off their shelves and placing them gently into large, black garbage bags. The Celeste wasn't there yet, but everything else was. Then the shoes, carefully boxed, then the dresses, slipped from their hangers. I worked methodically, bag after bag, box after box, carrying them out to the van parked in the loading zone downstairs. It took multiple trips. My back ached, but I felt nothing but a clean, purposeful resolve. This wasn't an act of spite, it was an act of reclamation. I was reclaiming my space, my peace, my future from the tyranny of her things. As I carried the last bag out, a bag containing a dozen pairs of designer jeans, I saw a note stuck to the fridge with a magnet. It was a reminder she had written for herself. Lunch with the girls at 1. Don't forget to transfer Leo's share of the rent. I almost smiled. I took the note, crumpled it, and threw it into the last bag of her things. The transfer was complete. The charity thrift store was just opening its doors for the day when I pulled up in the rented van. A kind-eyed older woman with a name tag that read Dolores came out to see what the enormous donation was. I opened the back doors of the van. It was packed floor to ceiling with black bags and boxes. Her eyes widened in shock. Goodness, son, did you clear out a whole department store? Something like that, I said, my voice even. It's all in excellent condition. I just wanted to go to people who will truly appreciate it. Her face broke into a radiant, genuine smile, the polar opposite of the sales associate's cold smirk. This will change lives, she said, her voice full of warmth. This will help so many women get back on their feet for job interviews, for a fresh start. Thank you so much. As we unloaded the van together, I felt the last remnants of the old, ordinary Leo lift from my shoulders. The weight of Sarah's world was being carried into a place where it could actually do some good. I wasn't just stitching her collection, I was transmuting its negative energy into something positive. It was the most valuable thing those objects had ever done. I didn't block Sarah's number. I wanted to hear it. The call came about 4 hours later. It wasn't a call, it was a seismic event transmitted through my phone speaker. It was pure, unfiltered, apocalyptic rage. She was screaming, crying, hyperventilating. Words like sociopath, monster, and police were thrown around like confetti. I held the phone away from my ear, letting the storm rage until it sputtered into hysterical sobs. Why? She finally shrieked. How could you do this to me? I waited for a moment of silence when I spoke. My voice was quiet, calm, and carried the full weight of my newfound peace. You were right, Sarah. I said I couldn't handle your lifestyle, so I relieved you of it. Now you're free to find someone who can afford you. I hear the Celeste bag is still available. Goodbye. I ended the call. I didn't turn off the phone. I just set it down and waited. The texts came in a torrential flood. Threats, pleas, curses, more threats. I read them all, each one feeling like a confirmation that I had done the right thing. They didn't hurt, they were just noise. The final victory wasn't in the chaos I had unleashed, it was in the profound, uncheckable silence I found within myself. Afterward, I had given away a fortune in purses and bought back my soul for free. I was finally, undeniably, enough. This has been my story on Truth Unraveled. Have you ever been made to feel less than because of what you could or couldn't provide? How did you reclaim your power? Share your story of quiet defiance in the comments below. Your experience could help someone else find their strength. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Truth Unraveled, Real Stories, Raw Confessions, and hit the bell for more stories about overcoming betrayal and finding self-worth. Until next time, stay strong, stay true to yourself, and never let anyone else put a price on your value.